Hello, young curiosity viewers. Imagine a nation whose rise to global power was fueled by an engine of nearly 1.5 billion people. A country where the sheer force of its human capital transformed it from a land of famine into the world's most powerful manufacturing hub. This is the story of China, a country whose massive population has been its defining characteristic and its greatest asset for centuries. But today, that very strength is turning into a profound and unprecedented vulnerability. The world's most populous nation is shrinking, aging, and losing its demographic advantage at a speed that has stunned demographers and economists alike. This is a crisis unlike any other, not born of war or natural disaster, but from decades of deliberate and at times brutal social engineering. This is a demographic time bomb with a fuse that has now been lit. But why is this happening? And more importantly, how will this fundamental shift change not just China, but the entire world? Stick around because the consequences of China's population crisis are already beginning to ripple across global supply chains, financial markets, and the very balance of geopolitical power. Before we get started, do me a favor and hit that like button. Subscribe to Young Curiosity for more in-depth explorations of global issues, and let me know in the comments what aspects of this topic you find most perplexing. The roots of China's population crisis are found in the most ambitious social experiment in modern history, the one-child policy. Instituted in 1979 by the Chinese government, this policy was a drastic measure designed to curb the nation's soaring population and address concerns about overpopulation and resource scarcity. The policy was enforced with a mix of propaganda, financial incentives, and, at times, coercive measures, including fines and forced sterilizations. For decades, it was hailed as a success, credited with preventing hundreds of millions of births and contributing to the country's rapid economic growth. However, this success came at a monumental cost. The policy created a demographic time bomb that is now detonating. By limiting families to a single child, it artificially suppressed the birth rate and created a highly skewed population pyramid. The number of young people entering the workforce is now plummeting, while the number of retirees is skyrocketing. This has created a severe demographic imbalance that threatens the very foundation of China's economy. The policy also led to a significant gender imbalance, as a cultural preference for male children resulted in sex-selective abortions and infanticide. This has left China with millions more men than women, leading to a host of social problems, including a rise in marriage difficulties for men and a black market for brides. This is not just an economic issue, it is a profound social and humanitarian crisis that will take generations to address. The economic consequences, China itself, are staggering. For decades, China's economic model was built on a simple premise: a virtually limitless supply of cheap labor. This demographic dividend was the engine that powered China's manufacturing boom, earning it the title of the world's factory. But that engine is now grinding to a halt. A shrinking workforce means that labor costs are rising, eroding China's competitive advantage. Companies that once flocked to China for its cheap labor are now looking to relocate their manufacturing to other younger countries like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and India. This is not a future problem. It is a problem happening right now. At the same time, the social contract that underpins the Chinese system is under immense strain. The country's pension and health care systems, which are still relatively underdeveloped, were not designed to support such a massive and rapidly aging population. The number of people over 60 is set to reach 400 million by 2035, while the working age population is already in decline. This has created a 4-to-1 problem, where a single working age child is often responsible for supporting two parents and for grandparents. This immense financial and emotional burden on young people is a major factor in the country's continued reluctance to have more children, even after the government has relaxed its birth policies. The once vaunted economic model that lifted hundreds of millions out of poverty is now facing its biggest internal threat. But the consequences of China's population crisis do not stop at its borders. They have global implications that will reshape the world. First, the crisis will profoundly impact global supply chains. The world has become accustomed to relying on China for everything from iPhones to clothing to medical supplies. A shrinking and more expensive Chinese workforce means that this model is no longer sustainable. Global companies are being forced to diversify their manufacturing, a process known as decoupling or friendshoring, which could lead to a less efficient and more costly global economy. Second, the crisis will affect global consumption. China is a major consumer of raw materials and goods from countries around the world. A smaller and less economically vibrant Chinese domestic market means less demand for everything from German luxury cars to Brazilian soybeans and Australian iron ore. This could have a ripple effect on global markets and affect the economic growth of nations that rely on trade with China. Third, China's population crisis will inevitably impact its geopolitical ambitions. The country has a long-term goal of becoming the world's leading economic and military power. A rapidly aging and shrinking population could weaken its ability to sustain a large and powerful military and could limit its capacity for long-term economic growth. The demographic dividend that propelled China's rise is now turning into a demographic tax, and this could fundamentally alter the balance of power in the 21st century. What do you think is a bigger factor in a country's long-term power, its economic strength, or its demographics? Share your thoughts below. The Chinese government is well aware of this crisis and has launched a series of increasingly desperate attempts to reverse the trend. In 2016, it officially ended the one-child policy, replacing it with a two-child policy, and then in 2021, a three-child policy. It has also offered a variety of incentives to couples, including tax breaks, longer parental leave, and subsidies for childcare and education. However, these policies have largely failed to produce a significant increase in the birth rate. The reasons for this are complex and deeply rooted in social and economic realities. Decades of the one-child policy have made large families culturally and financially unfeasible for most Chinese couples. The high cost of living, particularly in urban areas, the intense pressure for children to succeed academically, and the crushing burden of supporting aging parents have made many young people reluctant to have even one child, let alone two or three. The government is trying to reverse decades of social and economic trends with a few new policies, but the mindset of the population has already shifted. It's a classic case of too little, too late. The country is in a demographic death spiral, where a shrinking population of young people is unable to support an aging population of retirees, leading to economic stagnation that further disincentivizes young people from having children. In conclusion, China's population crisis is a profound and multifaceted challenge with consequences that will reverberate across the globe. It is a direct result of a policy that, while successful in its initial goal, created a monumental long-term problem. The shrinking workforce and aging population will challenge China's economic model, forcing a fundamental shift in global supply chains and consumption patterns. The social burden on young people is immense, and the government's attempts to reverse the trend have, so far, proven ineffective. The demographic dividend that fueled China's rise is now a demographic tax that threatens its long-term ambitions. For the world, this crisis is a powerful reminder that a nation's strength is not just measured by its current economic output or its military might, but by the long-term health and stability of its population. The story of China's population crisis is a powerful and sobering testament to the idea that a single policy decision can echo through generations and change the course of world history. Thank you for watching, and remember, stay curious.